My name is Don Ropes. I work at Inholland University in the Netherlands. I'm a professor of organizational science. And I'm a full professor now, so I don't have to worry about getting my work published as much as some of my colleagues. So what we do now is a lot of work out in the messy, dirty fields. Because it really is messy and dirty. But what we've done is I've been able to convince some of my colleagues to leave the warm bathwater of the university to go out into that cold, harsh climate of consultancy work, actually. So what we're doing is we're working in the triple helix, which is a combination of industry, academia, and government. So what we're finding is that to work in those collaborative research projects is really crazy. We've been doing it now for a while, but we didn't really have an idea about any theory on it. So tomorrow I talk about more of the theory of this transdisciplinary research. But what I wanted to do today is to show you one exercise that we actually do with the stakeholders in our group that has to do with knowledge integration. So Nagib's going to talk a little bit more about interdisciplinary communication, interdisciplinary work, and he's got a couple models there. And then I just want to show you a quick model of the process that we go through when we're doing these kinds of projects. And then what I want to do is to do an actual exercise with you that deals with knowledge integration. So we're a great, probably, there's very few people from the same discipline. So let's just see a show of hands. How many of you are social scientists? Social scientists? Yeah, 1, 2. How many of you are physicists or engineers? Okay, good. So we're already probably having a hard time understanding each other. But this is what it's all about. So we won't go into any details. We're just going to experience what it is. So I've got an exercise that we do. I've got 3 questions related to 3 different types of knowledge, and we're actually going to try and achieve some kind of results with the group, an integrated knowledge product that we can actually use maybe in this conference later on. So if you know anything about this conference, then actually you originally started, one of the main goals of the conference was talking about interdisciplinary communication. So it has been one of the things that's been interesting to me for the last few years that I've been coming here. And so Nagib and I had some communication about this earlier. I said, well, why don't we try and do a workshop together? So here I am, and here it is. So I've got a couple.
Okay. So I'm going to try to be as short as possible because that was I'm going to give a summary of 1 hour that once I was talking about that. So the situation is that analogy is central to the interdisciplinary communication, and it's something not well seen in the academic part. So analogy is necessary to communicate between different disciplines. But better than that, analogies is what are generated because of the interdisciplinary communication. And analogies are, I would say, this is not unanimous what I'm going to say, but I'm sure I can prove it, not prove it, reason that analogy is a necessary input for logical thinking, not just a possible input, as others say. I see no situation in which there is no an implicit analogy for the logical thinking to start with. Inductive thinking, abductive thinking, and deductive thinking. They need an analogy to start with. Hypothesis is based on analogies. When I have a theorem to prove, it's because by analogical thinking, I suppose that this is true. So there is no way for me, at least, not to use analogy, at least in an implicit way. So when you have two disciplines communicating with each other, you are doing that through analogies, but at the same time, you are generating more analogies. So to communicate, you use analogies, metaphor, and similes. What we said before about the translation between different semiotic systems, you need all that, an additional creativity. But the good news is that if you are effective in your interdisciplinary communication, you are generating in his mind the analogy he needs to prove it or disprove it with logical thinking. You see what I mean? So the relationship between both of them has been a kind of problematic. Okay. Some authors say, that the logical thinking is part of the analogical thinking. It's a subset. Some other authors say that it's the other situation around. That the logical thinking is part of the logical thinking. The analogical is part. Both of them are right. They seem to be in a contradiction, but they are not. Because what they have is an intersection. They intersect each other. So each one contains the other as the yin and the yang. So they contain each other. So both sides are right. They are in a sterile concurrency. Which one belongs to which one? Because both are right. They penetrate and contain each other like the yin and the yang. So if you add to this intersection the cybernetic loops, you can understand quickly how important and how useful, not just intellectually important, but pragmatically useful to keep an eye and to be aware about analogies. With no analogies, there is no logical thinking. And interdisciplinary communication is one of the best, if not the best, that can generate analogies. Input to logical thinking that would verify or not verify that, validate it or not, and all the analogies are verified. Advanced science. So logical thinking and science, they advance with analogical thinking. The 204, I made a track on analogical thinking. All hell broke loose everywhere around. How dare Callaos talk about analogical thinking? This conference is trash. So I had to stop it. But now I get less year to live, and I'm starting at it again. I mean, they don't have to say trash. They don't have to trash me with all what I just said. why you don't give me an argument that I am wrong and teach me, please? Teach me. I am ignorant, teach me. Why do you have to trash me just because I don't know something that you know? Tell me why you don't agree with me. And even if we still disagree with each other, at least we can learn from each other. So they trashed the conference, they trashed everything. And then at this moment I didn't care about me, but I cared about the conference. But from the last time that you got up there, I started with this problem again. I'm not asking you to agree with me. That would give me an intellectual pressure, and that's it. I would not learn. I want you to disagree with me, but with some reason. That way I learn. But okay, I can learn something else. I cannot see how science, disciplinary science, can work without an analysis. So if I am so stupid to see it, so please teach me. So at least in his case, I got at least one associate.
A fellow traveler.
A fellow traveler. So he asked me to start with that, and in order to continue with the workshop, the hour after this workshop is going to be on the same thing, but I'm going to use harsh words. But I'm not using any word that is not being used in the academic. Okay? Academic incest. In my opinion, when we don't relate disciplinarity, this is just an opinion, okay? Disciplinarity with interdisciplinary, we are at risk of intradisciplinary incest, which is worse than intra-university incest. So since people ingeniously use the word incest, why I cannot use it? It's a harsh word. One guy told me, hey, say all what you are saying, but don't use the word. Why not? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
No, this is good. The reason that I had asked Nagib to give this introduction about analogical thinking is because it's actually crucial that you're able to do this in these triple helix research projects. So just to bring it back down closer to home, my home in the case, is what we see here, and I'll talk about this tomorrow, is that monodisciplinary or multidisciplinary approaches to problem solving are only able to solve problems that aren't that complex. In order to solve these really systemic problems, and we deal with sustainability problems, in order to solve these systemic problems, which are highly complex, fuzzy, wicked, nobody really knows exactly what the problem is, you have to have these interdisciplinary environments. And what we found is that you can't do that just from the university. So what you see in this, and I just want to show this real briefly, because again, tomorrow I go into more detail. But if you see here, what we have is that this transdisciplinary research process begins with problem definition. Problem definition is different than finding a problem, because the problem is different from every perspective, as Graham spoke about earlier. So it has to do with real life world problems, and this is from society, this is professional practice. But scientific problems, and science also has input in that problem. So in order to understand between scientists and professionals or government officials, you have to be able to think in analogies, actually, and think in metaphors. Without that skill, you're lost. And we do try and teach our students to do that. So then the next phase is actually the research process itself, which is that knowledge creation. And if you see this as an iterative process, because the more that you know, the less you actually know, and the bigger your problem becomes, but also the more knowledge that you need to create occurs. And then finally you have knowledge application. This is where the knowledge comes to fruition. And so what I talk about tomorrow is that this process, that we found that this process actually can help both practitioners, societal results in new policy, for example, or new algorithms for logistics and supply chain management, which we're working on now. But it can also contribute to scientific practice in maybe new methodologies or new research questions. And then this feeds right back up into it. And this is because we don't know too much about this yet, the stakeholder discourse and the right world problems. But in any case, so you have all these different cybernetic loops going on, so it is complex in itself. And what the basis actually is, and again, I talk about it more tomorrow, the basic issue is that we as academics are typically working here about systems knowledge. And that's about the knowledge that we develop in the university. It's about what we can see now. It's explanatory knowledge. It's looking at a phenomenon that has already happened, that's already taken place, and describing that. So it's descriptive in essence. In transdisciplinary research, where problems are wicked and you're trying to actually create the new future, so it's closely related to design. You're trying to solve a problem and you're designing the future. You have to have some kind of knowledge about what you actually want to achieve. So this is about the original state of the system. How does it look now? What is its history? How did it come about? And this is about how that system should actually look like. What does that new created system actually do? And then you have to have some kind of transformational knowledge. So how do you go from the existing state to the new state? How do you go from what you have to what you want? And that requires what's called transformational knowledge. So what we see is we're typically teaching our students at all levels, and I think in all students in the management faculty where I work, but I think this is probably true for all faculties, that we are really focused here. Some information science faculties probably do design science research, which is closely related to this. But in any case, what we typically focus on with a lot of our students, a lot of faculties, is this knowledge about explaining what we see. So what I thought, well, this is what I said to Nagib, why don't we go ahead and use the knowledge that we have here and all you people to see if we can actually come to some new insights. And then if you see what I've done is I've linked the three different kinds of knowledges to three different kinds of questions. So we're just going to try and have a little taste of each one. If you see the first one is what do we currently do? So that's about the systems knowledge. What are we doing now? The next one is what does our future look like, or what would we like our future to look like? And then the third one has to do from the transformational knowledge. What is it now that we specifically have to do? So this exercise we've done with quite a few firms, but we've also done this in the triple helix, trying to figure out exactly what we need to do to change it. What do we want? What do we have now? What do we want? And how are we going to go about that? So this is actually, we're going to replicate this first phase of the Transdisciplinary research project. So what I have is, I would like you, maybe you can move next to somebody closer. And what I would like you to do, I've given you some sheets, some post-it notes. I would like you to take 5 minutes, 10 minutes or so, and talk to your neighbor about what you currently do in regards to interdisciplinary collaboration in your firm or in your school or whatever. So what is the current state that you are actually working on now? Try and be open, keep it to yourself. What are you doing? What do you see around you? If you're not a teacher or you're working in a firm, how are you collaborating with other firms, for example? So I'd like you to just go move together and talk about that with one another for a few minutes and write down each idea you have on one of those post-it notes, please. And then after that, we'll collect them and then we'll see if there's some kind of we'll put them on the wall and we'll see if there's some kind of theme that we can get out of there. So we'll do some data analysis together. So please start talking with your neighbor. Okay, so this was the end of first round. So what I would like you all to do, it's great that there's all this talking going on, that's the point. What I would like you all to do is to come up, leave your seats, a little motion, come on, it's a workshop, it's not a workshop. Get off, get out of your seats, and then we're going to come here and we're going to do some knowledge sharing. Come on over here.
Let me interrupt you for one moment, please. This is a second workshop, so it has another certificate. So be sure, all of you, that you are writing your name there. If not, you're not going to get the certificate.
Okay.
Okay. So come on over here.
The one with the three.
Yeah.
Just the first one at this point. Well, we'll see how it goes.
I was there when you participated, but
So come on down here, come up close so we can see you.
Maybe because I didn't say what I just said.
Come on down here. Okay, so the way, come on over here, guys. Don't line up, come around in a semicircle. One of the biggest issues is how do you share this knowledge? How do you make sure this knowledge that you generate in these environments is disseminated amongst the rest? So what we're going to do now is we're going to try and see if there's some kind of a theme to this first round of knowledge building. So if you could just take yours and read yours out loud.
From an emerging idea, we try to intercept different ideas from the different areas. And then once the proposal is clear for the partners, we proceed with the next task that we consider that is the definition of the activities for each element of the group.
Okay, so you're doing that in interdisciplinary groups.
Yes. So the first thing is to be very clear with your proposal.
Okay.
And then to express it with other people.
Okay.
So one example of, like, for example, if you want to build a prototype here, let's say you have an embedded system, and then you want to build a cyber physical system out of it, where you need a networking layer, applications layer, programming boards and interfaces. So, but just an electronics engineer would not be able to do it.
No.
So you would probably collaborate with an interdisciplinary domain of software engineering and mechanical engineering.
Okay.
And
that's what you're doing now.
Yeah, and come up with a prototype together.
Coming up with a prototype. Okay. Can I see your
A research proposal and a prototype.
Okay. So I'm going to put that right here. Can you maybe read yours out?
We have three ideas. One is team teaching.
Team teaching?
Yeah.
Okay.
Teams for the teaching. The second one is depending on the situation for the collaboration. Finally, is the brainstorming case study.
Research is the
department.
Okay, so that's kind of a little bit what they were talking about, yeah? So, but it's not the same, so I'm gonna put that over here. So we've got team teaching, communication, and a little bit of brainstorming. Maybe you could read yours?
Yeah, well, we do that more of the macro way, because in our university, we do have a lot of intercommunication, interdisciplinary communication.
Okay.
For example, I'm working the engineering career of informatics, but we don't have all the courses, which means if I have mathematics in my curricula, it's another department of mathematics who gives the courses. And
Okay, so you're actually exchanging teachers, so to say, where teachers are going,
there are different faculties.
different faculties, but students are going, actually taking courses in different faculties.
Yeah, we call it asignatura de servicios, which means services courses.
Okay.
Which means my students of informatics have to take those courses over there, or humanistics, ethics,
Ethics, yeah.
ethics, or business, for instance, or accounting,
Yeah.
statistics, all these courses that are related to the career, doesn't necessarily we give the courses.
And they're required to take those courses.
Yeah, you have to.
Okay, so you make requirements for getting out of your faculty?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
and also we do a lot of research on data input, or when I need information from another department or another information, another office, you have to request it and they send it to me. So we, because of distance modality, we have a lot of work in that.
Okay, but you're actually, yeah, okay, so at a teaching learning level, you're,
No, research too,
And
research,
research.
investigation, research, and what else? Extension. I don't know, extension, we have academic extension, social practice.
would you put that somewhere else, or does it fit close
They are
by?
different because we already done it.
Yeah, okay.
Doing
That's
it.
good. You're
We are
doing
doing
it.
it, yes.
That's great. Thank you. You guys?
Okay, well, I'm presently working as an adjunct at 5 different universities, but I have a collection of friends who I like to do research with, and they're all in different fields. So I generally connect with colleagues and just say, hey, you want to do this, want to go to this conference, let's do that. And usually it's an opportunity to work together. It's kind of a one-shot thing, though.
Okay,
It's not
yeah.
always ongoing necessarily,
Systematic.
not particularly, but I'm usually, not to shock you or anything, but I'm usually the driver.
Okay. But so this is the faculty exchange, is kind of,
Yeah,
yeah?
yeah.
Well, does that fit anywhere here?
It's a bit of a one-off, but
It's not rocket science.
no.
We do a collaboration with my colleague, and we are specialists from different disciplines. She is linguist, I'm a researcher of literature and researcher of cultural communication, and we are dealing with research with local text of our city. And our competencies help us with this research, and it's quite good.
So it's research-based collaboration. Okay. Great. Where would that go here? What do you think?
I think, yeah.
It'd be in this hood.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's here too, research, so maybe somewhere around here. May I see that?
This is the next question.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm actually in the United States Army Research Laboratory. Okay. And so, what the Army uses is what they call an integrated product.
Integrated product.
It's an old concept. They called it 10 years ago.
Okay.
But the basic idea is that we bring subject matter experts from various fields together to solve a problem.
Right.
So you may have, if you include things like producibility, someone who knows how to make stuff, maintainability or sustainability, someone who knows how to build it so it can easily be maintained. I know I personally work with, my primary field is in computer science, mostly network intrusion detection.
Mm-hmm.
And we teamed with some social scientists and human factors to make our products better.
Okay.
So we look usability study
Okay.
to inform our development, things like that.
So this is real transdisciplinary or interdisciplinary
Right.
collaboration for new product development,
Or
actually, right? Or improvement. Yeah, okay.
Improvement.
So it's a project. So,
Exactly.
okay, excellent. And does that fit somewhere along
It's
there?
very similar to what he was describing,
Yeah.
some little larger in scope.
Stick it right close then, please.
And now we are developing methods and teaching end users, end user computing is a method adapted from professional informatics.
Okay.
The method adapted how to teach programming, we would like to apply the very same method in end user communities. And methods adapted from other sciences, mathematics, biology, chemistry, and so on.
So you're using methodologies from different disciplines?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, wow, that's great.
To make end user more effective and more efficient.
Trying to improve something.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
That's it.
Excellent. And does that fit somewhere in one of the things we mentioned?
Okay, so with a 3 maybe.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Would you like to do yours? Please.
In my case, the university covered your days in short to result and to investigate the roots and the company, the private company for the attractive solution made for social society enterprise, as well as enterprise.
Okay, so you're bringing all the people together from the problem, the different
Yeah.
triple helix people? Okay. You do that structurally? That's part of the curriculum, or?
Yeah. Recently, because to 3 years, this is studies. The engineers, all engineers, biomedical engineers, and system and different engineers between jobs in research with medicine faculty and also with social faculty, because it's necessary to job between for a solution between them.
Yeah.
The social, but not the
Yeah, because of the complexity we need to.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, excellent. Maybe you could post that posted somewhere. Yeah, you really need like a whiteboard or something. That's okay. This is more just for the. Where do you think that fits in? Well, it's kind of messed up now. Thank you. Would you gentlemen like to? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have one too?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because she's from university and from public company.
Okay. Oh, good.
And so I work for a public company, the Canary Islands, totally owned by Rigor. And we work in different departments, but on a project basis. So we pick people for the project. So yeah, we are not really, let's say, interdisciplinary, always inside technology. We are not social people, and that's what we do for the second.
Okay.
But we work pretty well in that settlement.
Yeah. So a project-based work is for you guys.
Energy computer science.
Yeah.
And we have an area also to open things for the companies, the charities, which are small or medium, okay, to the innovation, I guess. But small.
Okay. Excellent. So that fits there. Yeah, it doesn't stick to them, but it's okay. All right, thank you very much. Interesting. It's nice to have people from practice doing it.
Okay, thank you. I'm from academia. I'm from University of Naples. Currently, I'm involved with along with a team of colleagues based in Naples in a huge European project funded under the Research and Innovation Program, H2020. It's related to a complex problem that is how to manage, how to govern the nexus among water, energy, and food. And it's intrinsically interdisciplinary because we have 7 countries involved, 9 partners, not only academics, one is also the public company where it comes from. And we have a lot of people in social science, many people in environmental sciences, many people in engineering, and so on. So the core challenge is exactly to capture something that is complex from different point of view and make a common sense of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
And how does that work for you? Is it difficult?
Very difficult. Everybody. I was in the principal investigator meeting in the last January. Everybody said he had a lot of experience with the past project. No one was so challenging as this one. So it's a huge challenge, but it's also stimulating. Have a huge challenge to cope with, to face.
How could you, if you were just to use 1 or 2 key words to describe what you do now, do you have one?
Sure. We are trying to capture social values through some means, put them in constraints of environmental sustainability, translating this buzzword in something that is operationalized, and supplying means to reflect on by quantification.
And your project is, per definition, multi or interdisciplinary.
Sure. But I can catch you the point that it should go for transdisciplinary, just interdisciplinary.
Yeah. Maybe you could post yours there.
Yes. The colleague is also involved in some.
Do you have one too, or that's your collaboration?
Yeah. No, I'm not collaborate with Michele in the project that they have put it up. But how you refer with our talk now to discuss about your points. I am a lawyer. I'm a strange animal because I deal with data protection and privacy, and yes, but I only deal with cybersecurity and technical aspects. So, frequently, I deal with, I share my ideas with people that are from different background, and
in your work, in your general daily work.
And the main thing is trust, because if I don't trust people with which I speak, I can't address anything. I have to consider that my colleagues have the correct background to address the work, because otherwise it's impossible.
Yeah.
But you for asking me to anticipate my introduction to that I will have tomorrow, because the first slide tomorrow I will say exactly that it's necessary. One of the main point is to have the premise is that people working together require mutual support, reciprocal mutual support, because it's impossible to work if I'm
So that's a critical success
Yeah.
factor for this transdisciplinary multi.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Did you?
Yeah, so so I think my notes are added already, but
Oh, okay. You were part of that group. Yeah.
yeah, but if I could put my 2 cents in the information security world, it starts off when you look at the multidisciplinary. It has to start off really transparent, and I think
trust.
Trust, transparency, and communication. Once it moves past those stages, though, there has to come a point for us in our world where processes have to be followed. I mean,
Protocols, you mean?
protocols, processes have to be followed, because if they are not followed, then you have the data breaches, you have all of these bad things that really happen.
Yeah.
So biggest thing is the transparency, the trust, communication, standards. There you go. So yeah. So kind of not as formalized starting off, but then as you move through the stages, for us in my line of work, it's kind of not as formalized, but then it becomes really stringent, formalized as you really roll up your sleeves and really get into it.
And how do you do that with all of because it's with different disciplines, I take it, different fields working together?
Transparency,
that's
and communication, because when you look at the information technology, cybersecurity aspect, that common vein runs through every single discipline.
Yeah.
So you have to have the transparency, and you have to have the communication, because if you have the communication, then you get the understanding. And if you don't have the understanding, then what's going to happen is that you're not going to be able to develop the proper product. And I'm sure, just like you mentioned, with what you do, you really have to, when it comes to the systems development, you have to really understand what that customer needs. So from that discipline standpoint, it's really important, communication and trust, but you really have to have that good understanding.
Your own discipline.
Yes. Well, of their discipline as well, with the other disciplines, you have to understand what they need and be able to translate that in order to effectively collaborate with people. So, yeah.
Wow, great. This was the first round. I don't know how many rounds, if we're going to be able to do any rounds, but I think we should stop probably here because it's been a long day. But I do have one of the crucial aspects of this process, and it's been mentioned by Nagib in the first workshop, is that investigator, the reflexivity, this reflectiveness during the whole process, that literally every step along the way, talking about it. For example, exactly what you brought up is, how do we understand each other? How are we doing? How do we feel about that? Are we working together as we would like to work together? Do we have a common understanding? For example, a common understanding about this. So for me, for example, one of the things that I heard was that projects. Seems that a lot of you work on projects that are, in essence, multi and interdisciplinary. So I'm just thinking, you know, okay, well, that's some kind of a general knowledge that we can all have. But I would just, so these are some of the things that you come across in these really complex EU projects, which, you know, I don't know, but I've worked in quite a few as well. How did this work for you? How do you, I mean, this is interdisciplinary communication. This is thinking in analogies. You're hearing other people. You're hearing people who come from different countries. So they speak differently. Maybe their metaphors are different. Their analogies are different. How did that work? How does that work for you? Would anyone like to just reflect on that? Did you enjoy this? Did you enjoy this exercise?
It's fascinating, it's hard work.
It's hard, yeah. This is only 1/3 of it, really. We usually do this in 3 or 4 hours.
Well, I think it's about giving ears to different perceptions.
Yeah. Yes.
Not only based on experiences, but also because of the cultural diversity people bring in. It's more about the perspective, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the things that we see too.
The
ability to deal with other perspectives.
And I must say, you used a very important word like metaphor, right?
Yeah.
I read in one of the papers that leadership is all about trust and also using metaphorical relationships to influence people and make them work in a collaborative manner to enhance productivity. That's
actually, I presented a paper last time on that too. That leadership is about making sure the underlying relationships work real well. So that's absolutely right. But so
One more thing, that openness.
Openness, absolutely, yeah. Did you feel open here? This is one of the things is creating an open and a safe environment is crucial to these. And transparency is, of course, one of the aspects of that. But this also shows that a group of people who have never met are actually working, and there was quite a few conversations, and you worked together, and you came up with something it's really good to see. It's kind of a safe environment.
Next time you should invite those who are not here today.
I will.